The Galactic Council met in the Grand Chamber, a place where leaders of hundreds of species had gathered for millennia, to discuss the fate of the galaxy. Their voices echoed through the vast hall. As the room hummed with tension, the humans had only just joined their ranks, but already there were murmurs in every corner of the chamber. Some species were eager to have them among the stars, while others were wary. The latter was led by the older, more established races who had watched empires rise and fall throughout the ages. They saw something in humanity, something they couldn't quite put into words, but it was there, a raw potential too dangerous to ignore. Ambassador Clara York stood at the center of the chamber, her presence calm, but her mind sharp. She had spent years preparing for this moment, her people's first real test in the galactic community. The council had called this emergency session to discuss the implications of humanity's rapid growth. Clara could see the concern in their eyes, especially from the older species, the ones who had seen countless species rise to prominence, only to crumble under their own ambition, the ones who believed that power had to be tempered by patience and wisdom. The North, a race of psychic warriors, were the first to speak. Their leader, a tall figure draped in ceremonial robes, stepped forward and raised his hand. His voice resonated in the minds of all present. He spoke of humanity's aggression, their rapid technological development, and their refusal to bow to the ancient ways of diplomacy. He spoke of how they had already begun expanding beyond their designated borders, and how they had shown no hesitation in their willingness to defend what they considered theirs. The North warned that the humans would soon outgrow the Council's ability to control them, that their unpredictable nature would soon lead to chaos across the galaxy. Ambassador York held her ground. She spoke of humanity's desire to bring peace not just to Earth, but to the galaxy itself. She reminded the Council that her people had learned the harshest of lessons, and now sought to build a future not based on conquest, but on cooperation. She pleaded with them to see the good in humanity, to trust in their ability to adapt and to evolve. But the room was filled with skepticism. The Orcs, a race of cybernetic beings, stepped forward next. Their cold, metallic voices echoed through the chamber. They spoke of humanity's technological advances, the weaponry they had developed, the ships they had constructed in record time. The Orcs warned that humans were too ambitious, too eager to explore the unknown. They feared that humanity would push the limits of technology and ethics until it was too late. As Clara tried to respond, the representatives of the older species exchanged looks of silent agreement. The decision was already made. The Galactic Council issued its warning. Humanity's reckless nature must be restrained. The warning was clear. If humanity continued on its current path, it would bring nothing but ruin to the galaxy. But Clara knew the truth. They did not understand. They feared what they did not know, and they had already judged humanity based on their own biases. She left the chamber with her heart heavy with the weight of the Council's decision. She knew the battle was far from over, but she also knew that humanity would not bend to anyone's will. They would rise in their own time, and when they did, the galaxy would understand just how wrong they were. Months passed after the Council's warning, but humanity's response was not one of rebellion or defiance. Instead, it was one of quiet resilience. The humans understood the risks they now faced and the weight of the warning that hung over them, but they knew that their strength lay not in brute force, but in their adaptability and determination. As the Council watched from afar, expecting humanity to falter, the humans did something the galaxy had not anticipated. They thrived. The first wave of human colonies had spread across the galaxy, not through violence or domination, but through careful negotiation and strategic partnerships with various species. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to learn, to adapt, and to unify. Earth had been a fragmented world, divided by nations and ideologies, but when faced with existential threats, humans had found a way to come together. The same spirit that had united them on their home planet now drove their efforts in the stars. They didn't just survive. They built alliances, nurtured relationships, and forged a new path forward. The smaller, less advanced species began to see humanity differently. They marveled at the humans' capacity to rise above their past, to create peace where others had failed, and to bring order to chaos. The humans' ability to create sustainable ecosystems on barren planets without resorting to exploitation was seen as a model of efficiency and foresight. It wasn't just their technology that impressed, it was their moral compass, the belief that progress should benefit all, not just the privileged few. But not everyone shared this view. The older species, those who had long ruled the galaxy, watched with growing unease as humanity's influence spread. They saw the humans' rapid expansion as a direct threat to their power. The Kara, a proud insectoid race with a history of territorial conquest, were particularly troubled by humanity's success. They had held dominion over vast swaths of the galaxy for centuries, and the humans' sudden rise was unsettling. They considered the idea of humans sharing their space as an affront to their status. In a move to reassert their control, the Kara launched a series of attacks on human colonies near their borders. They believed that by striking first, they could suppress the humans and send a message to the rest of the galaxy. What they did not anticipate was humanity's response. The humans did not panic. They didn't retreat into defensive positions. Instead, they counterattacked with precise, calculated force. The human military, a force built not just on technology, but on strategy, was unlike anything the Kara had faced before. Humans were not warriors by nature, but their ingenuity, their ability to adapt in the face of overwhelming odds, made them deadly. They studied their enemy, learned their tactics, and then turned those tactics against them. The first battle was over in hours. The Kara, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers, found themselves trapped in a series of ambushes they could not predict. Humanity's victory was swift, and it sent ripples through the galaxy. The Kara retreated, humiliated, and their empire began to fracture under the weight of their failed attempt to intimidate the humans. The Council, watching from their distant seats of power, refused to intervene. They had underestimated the humans, dismissed their potential, and now they were forced to confront the reality. Humanity was not the chaotic force they had imagined. They were something more, something they had failed to understand. In the wake of the Kara defeat, humanity's influence grew stronger. The smaller, weaker species who had once kept their distance now sought to align themselves with the humans, seeing them as a rising force to be reckoned with. The humans were building something new, something greater than the sum of their parts. They were forging a path forward, not through fear, but through unity. And the galaxy, though still unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface, was slowly beginning to change. The galaxy watched with bated breath as humanity's reputation spread like wildfire, and with it, the growing tension between the newer power and the ancient empires. Despite the unexpected defeat of the Kara, many believed humanity's victory was just a fluke, a momentary lapse in the inevitable march of time. The older species of the Galactic Council still clung to their superiority, convinced that the humans would soon collapse under their own ambition or falter in the face of a true galactic threat. But the humans proved them wrong in a way that no one could have predicted. The Targans, a brutal and war-hardened species known for their merciless conquest of lesser races, saw humanity as an easy target, an upstart species still unproven in the eyes of the galaxy. They had watched the humans' quick rise to power with growing disdain, believing their victory over the Kara to be a mere stroke of luck. To the Targans, humanity represented nothing more than a speed bump in their quest for dominance. They decided that the time had come to crush the humans' newfound confidence and teach them a lesson they would never forget. Without warning, the Targans launched a full-scale invasion on a vital human colony on the edge of human-controlled space. The colony, while not heavily fortified, was strategically important for the humans' expansion efforts. It was also the home of thousands of civilians and the key to a critical trade route. The Targans, assuming that humanity would submit to their superior military strength, expected the human defenders to fall quickly and to beg for mercy in a matter of days. But the Targans made a fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity's resolve, and they underestimated the scale of what they were dealing with. while the Targans were a mighty species with an almost unshakable belief in their superiority. They had never faced an enemy quite like the humans. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. As the Targan fleet descended upon the colony, the humans activated a new form of warfare, a hybrid of advanced technology and guerrilla tactics. The humans didn't just defend. They fought back with unrelenting fury. A few weeks earlier, their engineers had developed an experimental weapon system that utilized energy shields and disruptive pulse cannons, capable of neutralizing entire fleets' communications and power grids. The humans deployed these systems in secret, and when the Targan fleet arrived, they were blindsided. The first wave of Targan warships plunged into a technological nightmare. The humans had hacked into their fleet systems and jammed their communications, throwing their forces into chaos. Weapons that had once been the terror of the galaxy failed to fire. Shields flickered uselessly, and the Targan command ship, once a symbol of their unstoppable might, was suddenly isolated and vulnerable. The humans didn't stop there. They launched a series of devastating counterattacks, using their smaller, more nimble vessels to pick apart the Targan fleet piece by piece. They didn't give their enemies a chance to recover, not even a moment to regroup. Every Targan warship was met with swift retaliation, their assault faltering as their forces were whittled away. It became clear to all watching that humanity's victory was no fluke. It was the result of years of relentless preparation, unorthodox thinking, and an unyielding spirit. The Targans, forced to abandon their invasion, limped away from the battlefield, nursing a loss so humiliating that it would take years to recover from. The humans, meanwhile, had turned the tide of battle in their favor with such speed and precision that their victory echoed throughout the galaxy. The older species, who had dismissed humanity as an unpredictable and undisciplined race, began to take notice. What was once thought of as a fluke was now undeniable proof that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the Kara defeat, struggled to maintain its neutrality. The Targan defeat was another blow to their credibility. How could they continue to ignore the rising power of humanity? The Targans had underestimated the humans, just as the Kara had before them. And now the message was clear. Humanity was no longer just a newcomer to the galaxy. They were a force that would shape its future, for better or worse. The older species in the Council could no longer hide behind their smug indifference. They could only wonder if humanity could defeat the Targans so decisively. Who would be next? The shock of humanity's victory over the Targans spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. The once dismissive species of the Galactic Council now found themselves grappling with a harsh new reality. Humanity was not just another race vying for power. It was a force that could no longer be ignored. The Targans, proud and brutal, had been defeated. The Kara, who had been humiliated just months earlier, were not the only species who had underestimated the humans. The galaxy had been wrong about them. And now the Council was forced to face the consequences of their earlier dismissal. Yet while the Council began to quietly reconsider their stance on humanity, a new and even more dangerous challenge loomed. The Varans, one of the oldest and most influential species in the galaxy, decided that humanity's rise was a threat that could no longer be ignored. The Varans had ruled their vast empire with unchallenged authority for eons. Their control over trade, politics, and military might second to none. Their advanced biological enhancements and mastery over telekinesis made them nearly invincible in the eyes of the galaxy. The Varans had lived through countless wars and conflicts, and had seen empires come and go. They believed that they alone could maintain the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. And now, they feared that humanity, with its unyielding growth, was a destabilizing force that would undo everything they had worked to build. In a desperate attempt to assert their dominance and neutralize the human threat, the Varans declared war on humanity. Their massive fleet, one of the most powerful the galaxy had ever seen, moved swiftly toward a critical human-held system. The humans, aware of the Varans' overwhelming military might, knew this would not be like their previous skirmishes. The Varens were not an opponent they could defeat with conventional tactics. This time, they would need to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the greatest military power in the galaxy. Ambassador Clara York and the Human War Council knew the stakes were higher than ever before. They had no illusions about their ability to win this war outright, not with the Varens' fleet bearing down on them. But humanity was not known for its ability to surrender. It was known for its ability to adapt, to sacrifice, and to rise from the ashes. Clara's plan was bold, reckless even, but it was humanity's only hope. They would use a weapon that had been in development for years, something that had the potential to turn the tide of the war, but also risk everything. The weapon was called the Relentless Pulse. The Relentless Pulse was humanity's last card. It was not a weapon of mass destruction, but a disruptive force designed to completely disable the enemy's fleet. It was capable of disabling the Varens' technologically superior ships by sending out a pulse that scrambled their systems, rendering their advanced weaponry and shields useless. However, the pulse came with its own deadly risk. It required an enormous amount of energy, and the energy output would be enough to cripple the power grids of entire systems. Worse still, the pulse could only be used once before it fried every piece of technology within range, including the humans' own fleet. Clara York knew that this weapon could mean the end of humanity's dominance in the galaxy, but it could also be their only shot at survival. With no choice but to act, the human fleet prepared for the ultimate sacrifice. As the Varens' fleet drew closer, Clara made the call. The pulse was fired, its energy reverberating across the stars like the roar of a dying giant. The results were immediate. The Varens' fleet, once a majestic and indomitable force, fell into disarray. Their ships began to malfunction, their weapon systems failing, shields flickering out of existence. Their command structure crumbled as their telepathic communications were overwhelmed by the pulse. In mere hours, the Varens were defeated, not by the sheer might of human force, but by human ingenuity and the willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good. But the cost was immense. The relentless pulse had drained humanity's fleet of its power. The ships were crippled, and the human forces were left stranded in the aftermath of the attack. Thousands of soldiers and civilians perished in the chaos that followed, their lives lost to ensure the survival of the species. The humans had won, but at a terrible price. The Varens, humiliated and crippled, retreated in disgrace. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity's victory was realized, not through sheer force, but through sacrifice. It was a victory that would change the galaxy forever. The humans had proven something no one could deny. They were not a species to be underestimated, and they would stop at nothing to protect their future. The aftermath of the Varens' retreat left the galaxy in a stunned silence. Humanity had faced the greatest military power in existence and emerged victorious, but the cost of that victory was staggering. The relentless pulse had destroyed not only the Varens' fleet, but also much of humanity's own military might. Entire fleets lay crippled and lifeless, drifting in the cold void of space. The human colonies, though safe for the moment, were left vulnerable, their defenses shattered, their military forces stretched to the breaking point. Ambassador Clara York stood on the observation deck of the flagship Defiance, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The stars seemed quieter now, as if they too had witnessed the sacrifice humanity had made. The battle had been won, but it had cost them dearly. The loss of life, the destruction of so many ships, and the utter depletion of humanity's resources would take years to recover from, if not longer. The Council, which had once feared humanity's rapid rise, now looked at them in a different light. They no longer saw them as a reckless force to be restrained. They saw them as a resilient species, willing to pay any price for survival. The older races, who had long dominated the galaxy, could not ignore what humanity had accomplished. Some, like the Norith, grudgingly acknowledged their strength, while others, such as the Ricks, saw humanity's ingenuity as something that could be harnessed for the future. But none of them understood the true cost of humanity's victory. not in the way the humans themselves did. Clara knew that the road ahead would be long and uncertain. Humanity had taken down one of the galaxy's greatest empires, but that victory had not come without its own consequences. The Targans, the Kara, the Varans, they were not the only threats humanity faced. There were others, races that had been watching from the shadows, waiting for a moment of weakness. And that weakness was beginning to show. As the human fleet struggled to rebuild, new threats emerged from the uncharted regions of the galaxy. The Ular, a mysterious and enigmatic species whose motives were impossible to understand, began to make their presence known. Unlike the other galactic powers, the Ylar were elusive, their ships appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye. They did not communicate in the conventional way. Their intentions were cryptic and veiled in secrecy. The few encounters humanity had with them left more questions than answers, and each interaction was filled with tension. Some believed the Ylar were watching humanity, observing its every move, while others feared that they were preparing to strike when humanity's defenses were at their weakest. On Earth, the public began to question the cost of war. The families of fallen soldiers mourned their losses, their grief a silent weight on the hearts of the survivors. Many had sacrificed everything for the future, but now that the dust had settled, the questions were impossible to ignore. Was it worth it? Was it worth the loss of so many lives? Clara had always believed in humanity's ability to endure, to rise above their trials. But now, she found herself asking those very same questions. Despite the pain and the loss, there was no time to grieve. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it. The Council, despite their reservations, began to send emissaries to Earth, offering their support and resources to help rebuild what had been lost. The humans were now a force in the galaxy, one that demanded respect, whether the older species liked it or not. But the offer of help, while appreciated, was not a sign of true alliance. It was a recognition of humanity's power and influence. Clara met with representatives from the Rix, the North, and even the Targans, who were now forced to reconsider their positions. They spoke of rebuilding the galaxy, of forging new alliances, and of the future. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was like a powder keg, and humanity's victory had only made the fuse shorter. The old empires, bruised but not broken, were ready to strike back at the humans in ways the galaxy had never seen. And the Ular, who had watched from the shadows, might have their own plans. Humanity had won, but the war was far from over. Clara York knew the true test was only just beginning. The galaxy was about to see what humanity was truly made of, and whether they could continue to survive in a galaxy that would never stop challenging them. As the galaxy slowly returned to a fragile semblance of peace, the human race found itself walking a thin line between survival and annihilation. Though the Targans, the Kara, and the Varans had retreated in defeat, their grudging respect for humanity was tempered by something darker, a growing fear that humans were not just a threat to their dominance, but an unpredictable force capable of reshaping the balance of power across the stars. The other species of the Galactic Council, though initially willing to recognize humanity's strength, now viewed them with suspicion, as potential rivals instead of allies. Clara York sat in the quiet of her office, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. There was a growing tension among the Council, whispers of unrest, and the unsettling rumors that something far worse was waiting on the horizon. The Ylar, whose motives remained a mystery, had been making more frequent appearances in human space. Their ships would materialize out of nowhere, flicker in and out of existence like shadows, and vanish before any meaningful communication could take place. Yet the unsettling presence of the Ylar was only the beginning. The Rix, despite their outward support for humanity's victory, had begun to increase their military patrols along the edges of human-controlled space. Their cold, mechanical nature belied a growing unease, an anxiety that something more dangerous than humanity might be stirring in the deep reaches of the galaxy. They had begun to send more emissaries to human worlds, seeking to establish greater control over the newly discovered technologies humanity had shared. While they had learned to respect human ingenuity, the Ricks were not a species known for trusting anyone. They viewed humanity's technological prowess as both a blessing and a curse, and they were increasingly interested in securing the humans' innovations for their own future advantage. Meanwhile, humanity's own government had begun to question the wisdom of their aggressive expansion. The toll of war weighed heavily on the minds of Earth's leaders, and a growing faction of pacifists pushed for a diplomatic approach. While many in the military remained determined to press forward, the political divide was becoming more pronounced. Clara York was caught in the middle, balancing the interests of military leaders, the council's representatives, and the voices of those who demanded peace. But Clara understood one inescapable truth: the war was not over, not by a long shot. Humanity had won only a temporary reprieve, and their enemies would never forget the wounds they had suffered. The situation came to a head when an unknown enemy launched a sudden and devastating attack on a key human colony in the distant sector known as the Kesari Rim. The colony, which had been rebuilding after the previous conflicts, was taken by surprise as fleets of unidentified ships descended upon it with devastating precision. These ships, unlike any previously encountered, were sleek and almost organic in appearance, resembling giant, shadowy insects with a haunting and terrifying aesthetic. They emerged from deep space without warning, their advanced weaponry tearing through the colony's defenses in minutes. The enemy's attack was swift, brutal, and seemingly calculated to wipe out any trace of human presence in the sector. The fleet's commander, General Kendra Duval, was one of the first to send a distress signal, but by the time reinforcements arrived, the damage had already been done. The colony lay in ruins, its once bustling cities reduced to rubble, its citizens slaughtered. There was no sign of the attackers, only the lingering feeling that the galaxy's greatest unknown threat had just made its move. The Ulur, the Ricks, and every other species in the galaxy had been completely silent in the wake of the attack, offering no explanation, no answers, only silence. As Clara read the reports of the attack, she knew that this was a turning point. Humanity was now facing a force that was far more dangerous than anything they had encountered before. This wasn't just another military conflict. It was a warning, an ominous signal that their victory over the Varans, Targans, and Kara had drawn the attention of something far older, more powerful, and far more lethal than anything they had imagined. Whoever, or whatever, had attacked the Kesari Rim had known exactly what they were doing. The only question now was whether humanity could survive what was to come. The stakes had just been raised, and Clara knew the time for diplomacy had passed. The galaxy was no longer a place of uncertainty. It was a place of war, of shadows, and of ancient forces awakening from their slumber. And humanity, despite all its strength, was once again standing at the precipice of extinction. In the deep void of space, the true war was only beginning. The devastation of the Kesari Rim colony was not just a tragedy, it was a message. It sent ripples through the galaxy, shaking the confidence that humanity had built in the wake of their previous victories. For the first time, Clara York and the human leadership were forced to face the chilling reality. The galaxy's true dangers were not merely in the form of power-hungry species. They were far older and more enigmatic. The attackers had struck with precision and purpose, their ships slipping in and out of human space without warning, leaving no trace of their identity. There was no communication, no demands, no reason for the carnage. Only silence followed in the wake of their destruction. Clara knew that a response was inevitable, but it couldn't be just a reactionary one. Humanity had to understand their enemy before they could even think of fighting back. In the aftermath of the attack, Clara called for an emergency summit with the leaders of the remaining galactic powers. It was time to take the first steps toward uncovering the identity of this new threat, and to forge alliances with those who might help them unravel the mystery. But the summit proved far more contentious than Clara had hoped. The Ricks, their robotic commanders impassive as ever, offered little help. They were only interested in securing their borders, leaving humanity to handle the situation alone. The North, despite their vast knowledge of ancient technologies, were equally unwilling to commit to any real action. The Yuilar, who had been watching humanity's rise with a mixture of curiosity and caution, remained silent, their cryptic presence only adding to the growing unease. As Clara sat at the table with the other council representatives, the weight of the situation became all too clear. Humanity was once again standing alone against a threat they didn't understand. This enemy was not bound by the same rules of warfare or diplomacy. They didn't seek conquest or resources. They simply sought to annihilate. And if they could strike without warning, without reason, humanity would be at a tremendous disadvantage. The attack on the Kesari Rim was just the beginning. As the days passed, other colonies along the outer edges of human space began to report similar attacks, each one more devastating than the last. The enemy's ships, though never fully understood, seemed to possess a power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could bypass shields, disable energy systems, and disintegrate entire fleets in the blink of an eye. Every attack left humanity reeling, its forces unable to respond quickly enough to stop the assault. In the midst of this chaos, an unlikely ally emerged. A group of rogue scientists from the human colony of Epsilon Theta had been studying the remnants of the mysterious enemy's technology. They had discovered something incredible. The attackers were not a single species, but rather a collective force, a coalition of ancient entities who had once ruled the galaxy long before the Council's creation. They were the remnants of a forgotten empire, one that had fallen into oblivion thousands of years ago. These entities, using an advanced form of collective consciousness, had remained dormant in the depths of space, biding their time until humanity's rise had disturbed their slumber. The rogue scientists, led by Dr. Isabel Rayan, proposed a daring plan. Using a prototype deep space scanner, they believed they could track the signals of the enemy's ships and pinpoint their location. But the technology was unstable, and the risks of using it were enormous. Clara and her advisors knew the cost of failure would be catastrophic. If the humans couldn't learn more about this enemy, they might find themselves wiped out in the blink of an eye. Clara's mind raced as she considered their options. The humans had always been known for their ingenuity, their ability to innovate in the face of insurmountable odds. This was no different. The relentless pulse had shown them that even the most powerful of enemies could be brought down. But this time, the solution would need to be more precise, more calculated. If humanity was to survive this new threat, they would have to be one step ahead. And that meant uncovering the truth of who these attackers were and what they wanted. As Clara prepared to make her decision, she knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had gained the respect of its enemies through sheer determination, but now it was fighting something much greater, a force older than the Council, older than anything the galaxy had ever known. The real war had only just begun, and humanity was about to step into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The price of victory would be steep, but humanity had already proven it was willing to pay it. The tension in the galaxy was unbearable. Humanity had withstood the wrath of the Targans, the Kara, and even the Varans, but the true test was yet to come. The strange enemy that had struck humanity's colonies, an ancient and mysterious coalition of forgotten entities, remained an enigma. Despite their devastating power, they revealed nothing of their purpose. They came without warning, left no survivors, and made no demands. Each attack felt more like a punishment than a conflict. The galaxy had never seen anything like them, and Clara York knew that the human race had reached the precipice of extinction. The rogue scientists, under Dr. Isabel Rayan's leadership, had worked tirelessly on the prototype deep space scanner. After countless failed tests and near-catastrophic failures, they finally unlocked the key to detecting the enemy's cloaked ships. The device, a marvel of human ingenuity, was ready, but at a cost. It would only work for a short time before its power core destabilized. with no guarantee they could repair it once it was used. Humanity had but one shot to strike at their unseen enemy. Clara stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars through the viewport. The human fleet, though diminished, was ready for the assault. There were fewer ships now, fewer soldiers, and fewer resources to draw from, but the spirit of humanity remained unbroken. Their victory against the Varens had been won through ingenuity, and now they would fight not just to survive, but to ensure their place in the galaxy. The plan was simple, yet deadly. Use the deep space scanner to pinpoint the enemy's location and strike with everything they had. They had learned from the Kesari Rim tragedy that the enemy didn't fight like any species humanity had encountered before. They didn't fight for territory or control. They fought for something else, something far darker and more terrifying. The humans would find out what it was, and they would do it by forcing their enemies to show themselves. As the human fleet surged toward the coordinates provided by the scanner, Clara's heart pounded. She knew that their enemies could be anywhere, and that humanity's attack would likely be their last. Every ship that made the jump was vital, and every life was on the line. The time for hesitation had passed. Clara's voice was steady but resolute as she gave the final orders to her fleet. "We make history today," she said, her gaze unwavering as the fleet moved into position. "This is our galaxy, our future. We fight for it now." As the human ships jumped into the enemy's territory, the darkness of space seemed to close in around them. The deep space scanner flickered to life, its signals tracing through the emptiness, finding something that wasn't supposed to be there. The enemy ships appeared, massive, shadowy vessels that seemed to defy logic. They were not ships in the traditional sense, but living, organic constructs, their surfaces rippling like a biological membrane, their shapes shifting in ways that were impossible to track. The fleet's sensors blared in warning, but there was no time to adjust. The enemy was here, and they were ready to fight. A massive battle erupted as humanity's fleet clashed with the strange ships. The enemy's weapons were unlike anything humanity had faced before. Energy blasts seemed to materialize out of thin air, their sheer force cutting through shields and tearing apart hulls with ease. The human ships fought back with every weapon in their arsenal, but nothing seemed to stop the enemy. It was as if they were fighting against a force of nature itself. In the heat of the battle, Clara made a decision. The deep space scanner, its power fading, was their only hope of pinpointing the enemy's core, of finding the source of their unrelenting attacks. She ordered the Defiance to move directly into the heart of the enemy's forces, hoping to use the scanner's last burst of power to lock onto the origin of the assault. As the ship's shields flickered and the crew fought to keep the ship intact, Clara took one last look at the battlefield. "We fight together," she whispered, a fierce determination in her eyes. The Defiance surged forward, the scanner's final pulse cutting through the void. The enemy's ships faltered for the briefest of moments as the signal locked onto their heart, a massive, pulsating core located at the center of their formation. Clara knew it was now or never. The humans fired everything they had left: conventional weapons, experimental tech, and even the remnants of the relentless pulse, focusing everything on that one point. The impact was devastating. The core of the enemy ships shattered, causing a ripple effect that decimated their fleet. The strange, living ships began to disintegrate, their organic structure collapsing in on itself. The attackers faltered, and then, with a deafening silence, they fell into the void. Humanity had won, but at a cost. Clara stood, her heart heavy, as the battle finally ended. Their ships were shattered, their fleet reduced to a fraction of its former strength. The damage was done. The losses were irreparable, but humanity had emerged victorious once more. The enemies who had struck without warning, without purpose, had been vanquished. As the human fleet limped back to their colonies, battered but not broken, Clara knew the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had survived against the odds, had proved that their will to survive was stronger than any foe. The price had been high, but humanity was still here, still standing. And that, Clara realized, was enough to give hope for the future.